please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Well, it's a mega deal for India's e-commerce sector, with Walmart picking up a 77% stake in the homegrown e-tailer for $16 billion. Now, as part of the deal, the remaining 33% shareholding will be divided between co-founder Binny Bansal and investors Tencent Holdings, Tiger Global and Microsoft Corporation. Of course, there could be potential investors who will join post this deal. Flipkart and Walmart have confirmed that they are in talks with potential investors. Now, speaking to us after the announcement, Walmart's president and CEO Doug McMillon said that India is one of the company's key growth markets, and that while e-commerce is still small in the country, they believe that there is much upside for growth from here on. Now, in line with the government's vision, McMillon added that Walmart is keen to support the Indian market and work towards enhancing farmer incomes as well as brick and mortar and kirana stores. In fact, I pointedly asked Doug if they had been given some comfort politically before making this big ticket investment, and the answer very categorically was, we feel welcome in India. Speaking about Flipkart, the Walmart CEO said that he sees exciting opportunities in the fashion business as well as the payments platform PhonePe. On the leadership strategy going forward, McMillon added that local leadership will be empowered and bureaucracy from the US will not run Flipkart. In fact, he believes that there will be an all-stars board that will continue to run Flipkart, which is pretty much board-driven even today. But the final composition of the board has not been decided as of now. Now, Walmart will continue with the expansion of its cash and carry business, and it aims to open about 50 stores in the next 5 years. So that is the plan. So brick and mortar and e-commerce are going to go hand in hand. Doug McMillon believes that that is the way forward. As far as the listing of Flipkart is concerned, the Walmart CEO says while both Flipkart and Walmart share that aspiration, there is no timeline just yet. Meanwhile, Flipkart's co-founder Binny Bansal says the company's short-term focus will be on accelerating growth and expansion, while the long-term focus will be on leveraging the synergies between Flipkart and Walmart. He emphasized that the leadership team will continue and Flipkart will remain a board-managed company. The partnership with Walmart will also help Flipkart explore new areas and scale up existing businesses. They're doing a pilot in the grocery front in Bangalore. They hope to take that to 5 cities by the end of the year, and food and grocery is likely to be one of the key focus areas for this partnership going forward. So that, in sum and substance, is what we got from Doug McMillon, Binny Bansal, Kalyan Krishnamurthy and Krish Iyer as we sat down with them this morning. But what does this deal mean for Indian e-commerce? To discuss that, joining me today, Sanjeev Agarwal, co-founder of Fundamentum Partnership, a man who has bet on many e-commerce companies in his avatar as the founder of Helion, Meekan Maheshwari, founder of Udyam and the former Chief People Officer at Flipkart, Anil Kumar, the CEO of Red Seer Consulting, and Alok Mittal, the co-founder and CEO of Indify Technologies. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV18. Meekan, let me start by asking you, you were part of Flipkart between 2009 and 2016. You exited the company in 2016. You're called what, Flipster? So once a Flipster, perhaps always a Flipster, I don't know. One thing that struck me today when I was having that conversation with Doug McMillon, Kalyan and Binny this morning, the sense was that, look, we want the local leadership to be empowered. We want the local leadership to run things. In fact, Doug McMillon several times over saying that we like what these young entrepreneurs have been able to do. We like the creative energy. They are creative problem solvers, and we want to dial in, I'm using his words, we want to dial in into that entrepreneurial spirit and that entrepreneurial energy. The brands will continue to remain distinct. So in that sense, this is the intention. How it finally plays out in reality is a different story. But you believe that it's going to be important for Walmart to let the Flipkart culture retain and be nurtured going forward to ensure that this partnership works. Meekan?
I think that will be very important. I feel what has gotten built over the last 10 years, both in terms of value and in terms of the business, but more importantly in terms of the organization and the culture that exists within, is a key differentiator. It is what has led Flipkart to be what it is. It is what's led Flipkart to fight a competitor like Amazon and stay ahead. So I think it's going to be very important that both that culture and that autonomy stay. Continuing to build on capabilities, and like Binny mentioned, that slowly start learning from the wealth of experience that Walmart brings in terms of supply chain. And that in a country like India, which might be very different from what it is in a lot of developed economies, and we have a lot of infrastructure, a lot of other, just the geographical disparity, the climate, weather, states, all of that, the complexity in India is very high.
Sure.
So slowly be able to learn that and drive that. I feel that's probably how it should play out.
Yeah, you know, I can see that you're wearing your Flipkart T-shirt. So as I said, perhaps once a Flipster, always a Flipster. But let me go across to Sanjeev Agarwal now. And Sanjeev, you know, you've bet on many e-commerce companies in your avatar at Helion. You know, what does this mean as far as Indian e-commerce is concerned? Again, I go back to my conversation this morning, and Binny saying very categorically that this is a validation not just of the Indian startup ecosystem, but it's also a validation of India's e-commerce story. Doug McMillon pointing out that we understand that, look, the e-commerce market in India is small today, but we believe that it is going to be compelling and exciting, and that's what we're betting on. Now, whether $16 billion is appropriate valuation or not, only time will tell. But what do you believe this deal means for India's startup ecosystem and specifically for e-commerce?
No, I think, Shireen, that's a great question. You know, we all know that this startup ecosystem is now probably a decade old. And one of the big missing pieces was that a lot of capital had come into the ecosystem, but very little had gone back. And when you compare this with China, I think the velocity of returns was much faster. So I think this payday actually for venture investors will give a lot of confidence to limited partners that India is for real. I think India had promise, but so far India had not delivered on its promise. So this nothing like seeing the actual, So now it is promise delivered at a fairly mega scale. And I think not only is this relevant for retail or e-commerce, but this is a marker for creation of India's digital economy, which goes well beyond e-commerce into transportation, healthcare. So I think this is the first industry which is embracing technology and internet, and the digital economy that we are hoping to become $1 trillion. This is a signature transaction for that. Therefore, I think additional flow of capital, more creation of jobs, you know, better competitor stronger competitor for Amazon. I think all those are good things in this deal. The only sad part is that India still is not building build-to-last companies. And I mean, it's very laudable to build a $20 billion market value company. So I would say 9 on 10, but a 10 on 10 would have been to build a build-to-last business. You know, which is where we learned a lot from our predecessor entrepreneurs like Nandan Nilekani and Premji and Murthy. So I think a great job in getting this started, but I do feel that Indian entrepreneurs in the internet economy are good at ideation and getting started. But we have a long way to go before we start patting ourselves on our backs. That our company building skill or progress is still work in progress.
Right. Okay, so So we're good at starting up, not necessarily great at scaling up, and we need to focus much more on building companies that last. But let me bring Anil into the conversation. And while Sanjeev pointed out that this is a big-ticket transaction when it comes to the larger digital play for India, let's focus for a minute on the e-commerce space. I'm just taking a look at market shares. Flipkart, the leader with 39.5%, Amazon 31%, and Paytm Mall much smaller at about 5.6%. And then you have a bunch of others. From an e-commerce perspective now, we've just seen, in fact, it was ironic that the day this deal was announced, the night before, Amazon, the parent of Amazon, India, decided to pump in more money here into the country. What do you see this doing as far as the e-commerce play is concerned? Is this now going to be a three-way battle between Bezos, Walmart, Flipkart, and of course Alibaba?
Sure. I think as per our estimates, the market size of Indian e-commerce, which is e-tailing, which is we are talking about just the products, is roughly about $18.6 billion as of calendar year 2017. There are varying estimates of who has what kind of a market share. According to us, Flipkart Group has about 46% market share. Flipkart standalone might have about 39%. And then this other numbers look similar. So increasingly what we're seeing is that the market is being cornered by the larger players and larger horizontals. So even if you look at the last year's growth rate, Flipkart and Amazon and maybe to some extent Paytm were the ones which had a high double-digit growth rate. And the verticals and the smaller horizontals have been struggling quite a bit. We feel that that's going to continue going ahead, and for some time, at least next couple of years, you would see that either there are large horizontals like Flipkart, Amazon and Paytm who would have a say, or there would be very super specialized verticals like Nyka's of the world who are bringing a different value proposition altogether. So in my mind, yes, it would be a three-way battle between Alibaba, SoftBank combined, Walmart, Flipkart and Amazon. Now, a lot of it depends on how much Paytm is able to perform in next year or so, because they have started doing something which is very different, which is O2O model in India. And while it's a great start for them, but still Paytm has not proven themselves. So still a lot of work has to be done by them before they can become a formidable competitor to Flipkart and Amazon.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And whether we see Amazon going the O2O route, boosting the food retail business, focusing on growing the private label space, I mean, these are all going to now be focus areas for these three companies. Flipkart, of course, already ahead, especially when it comes to the fashion part of the private label segment. But let me bring in Alok Mittal into this conversation. Alok, as Anil was pointing out, it's going to be increasingly difficult now for the standalones, minus these deep-pocketed big boys backing them. Unless you're niche or super specialized, you perhaps don't really have a hope in hell to last it out. Do you see now, more correct consolidation? Do you see, bloodletting continue? What's your sense now on what we can expect in the e-commerce space?
I think there are several layers of e-commerce that are still waiting to be built out in India. In my mind, mobility still hasn't played out between the players that we are mentioning. And large categories like grocery are still out there to be solved. So I do not think that by any means this battle is over. India is a rapidly growing market with probably 10% of where we will be in 5 years from now. And I still see the potential for other Indian companies to occupy one of those anchors, whether it is mobility, whether that is tier 3, tier 4, or whether that is high-frequency categories like groceries. And leaders are yet waiting to be built in those spaces.
Okay. So what, to your mind, Alok, is the big transformational change that you believe, if any, this deal will bring about?
I think the entrepreneurs will, be far more ambitious in their goals now. We've seen this over the last 20 years in the ecosystem. There is some landmark deal that happens, and suddenly there is a spate of entrepreneurs who come out thinking bigger than before. And I think this $20 billion valuation will push people in a direction of saying, I can create the next $1 billion company or a $10 billion company. that is suddenly in reach of entrepreneurs. So I think it's a great development for the Indian entrepreneurial ecosystem, and it will drive many more entrepreneurs to think bigger than they could ever think before.
Right. Let me go back to Sanjeev Agarwal. Sanjeev, what do you believe is going through the minds of a big basket, a grofers, a shop close at this point in time? I mean, this will inspire a whole new generation of entrepreneurs, but the existing entrepreneurs who are looking at how this impacts their own business, their own bread and butter, their livelihood, what do you believe is going through the minds of some of these companies? And what will have to be the choices that they make from here on?
I think, Shireen, it's a slightly nuanced question, and I'll probably break it in two parts. One part is categories which are very, very large, and let's say grocery would be that category, or from the industry standpoint, and then market segments that are very large but are early. So I would call it the next India, which is tier 3, tier 4. Right. And given that I'm on boards of both Big Basket and Shop Clues, that is a lens I'm using to respond to your question. And then maybe the third bucket can be things which are a little bit more specialized, like gentleman talked of Nykaa, or we have a portfolio company called LiveSpace,
Nykaa,
which is in the online design business. So I think the categories which are very, very deep and not very big, my sense is those guys will continue to benefit from ecosystem creation which a deal like this creates, which is logistics, payments, commerce, all those things get better. And you see the ripple effect of these improvements on those specialized players. Now, but when you get into a category like grocery, it's such a large category, it's almost like horizontal. So that is certainly going to become more bloodier. Which means that it's going to be great for customer. It's going to be great for online transition from offline, but it's going to be a lot of bloodbath between Flipkart, Amazon, and Big Basket and all the others who are around. And I think that is where the men will get separated from boys. Because we have seen in our lives that capital only goes thus far. And then the question is, can a local entrepreneur, let's say Big Basket founders, out-execute global companies like Walmart and Amazon? And one can argue this from both sides. Those guys bring a lot of processes, local entrepreneurs bring market knowledge, etc., etc. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. So nobody should feel secure, which is a very good place to be at so far as customers are concerned, because the adoption to online.
So as somebody who's sitting on the board,
the friction that we have.
So Sanjeev Agarwal.
Yes.
I'm interrupting you. As somebody who sits on the board of both Shop Clues as well as Big Basket, what is uppermost in your mind today? I mean, what is going to be the strategic shift, change, choice, sacrifice that you make in light of this big development? And it is a big development.
Yes, I think really there are two aspects that are you out executing your peers, and two, do you have access to large pools of capital till the development phase of the market kind of stabilizes and we have all the customers come online. So I think this is not the game for the weak-hearted anymore. It never was, and now I think the ante gets raised. So this is a very interesting phase,
Right.
and I'm hoping that one of these guys or both of these guys and many others will be able to demonstrate that Indian entrepreneurs can hold on their own, and we are not building companies
Yes.
for short haul. At least that is my hope. And that
Absolutely.
is
Let me
what
go back
we
across to
are
Meekan.
gearing for.
That is our hope. That is certainly our hope. But let me go back across to Meekan. Meekan, you know, one of the challenges is likely to be integration. And while on the front end, they do intend to continue to have distinct separate brands, if you really want to make this work, you need to leverage the synergies on the back end. You know, culturally, size-wise, capabilities-wise, processes-wise, you know Flipkart inside out. What do you see as being the key challenge there when it comes to integration, Meekan? Could you hear me, Meekan?
I can't hear.
Yeah, I can't hear.
Okay, we'll try and fix that. We'll try and fix that audio. Is my voice getting through to you? No. Let me go across to Alok then. Alok, I was asking Meekan that question. Let me put that across to you. You know, what do you see as being the big challenges? We've talked about the opportunities, but what do you see as being the big challenges? Because, you know, execution, leveraging the synergies, to make this work, that's going to be critical.
I think given that this is a flagship acquisition for Walmart, which otherwise has very little footprint in direct-to-consumer retail in the Indian market, I would expect relatively low levels of integration at this point in time, and largely supply chain efficiencies being drawn in from the buying strength that Walmart brings to the table. So I think it's an easier one than if a company with a large India footprint would have acquired Flipkart. I think the question of where do you go from here is the more important one in my mind. Because Walmart pretty much has a clean slate now to say what is the direction they want to take this in. And do they indeed see more global synergies beyond what Flipkart brings to Walmart just for the Indian market? This is not an inexpensive acquisition. I would very much be surprised if this was used only for the Indian market. I think there will be attempts to expand the Flipkart platform beyond India.
Right. I think you're absolutely right. That will certainly be a consideration. In fact, I go back to the conversation that I was having this morning with the senior leadership. And for instance, Doug McMillon pointed out that Walmart doesn't have a full-fledged payment platform, and that's where they would like to learn from the phone pay experience of Flipkart. And of course, there is this business of being able to take Flipkart sellers as well as its private labels, put them onto the Walmart global platform beyond just sourcing out of India. But, you know, I want to also ask you, Alok, and let me put that question to you, Sanjeev, as well. Where does this leave SoftBank? I mean, you know, they've exited Flipkart in about a year's time. They still hold on to some stake in InMobi, Snapdeal, Ola, Oyo. You know, where do you really see Masayoshi's big plan for India now? You know, he was talking about $10 billion over the next few years. He's consistently been bullish on India. But where do you believe that this leaves SoftBank, Alok?
So I think from SoftBank's standpoint, you know, this is certainly a headline investment. You know, the IRRs look great, even if the money on money, you know, given their short holding period, has not been something to write home about. But this will certainly increase their confidence in the Indian market and their ability to back entrepreneurs. I do agree with Sanjeev that given the size of SoftBank's fund, they would want to see entrepreneurs who are willing to go all the way. And that is the nature of bets that they're likely to take in the future. But certainly, I think from SoftBank's standpoint, all in, I see this as extremely positive development and something that should encourage them to put more money behind Indian entrepreneurs.
Okay, you see them being putting more money behind Indian entrepreneurs. So we've got Meekan back. Meekan, let me put that question to you again. You know, it was pretty clear from what Binny as well as Doug McMillon said that in the short term, the focus is going to be on acceleration. It's going to be on expansion and playing out the business as is. the synergies will be sort of medium and long term. But from getting started, from a getting started perspective, what do you believe will be the key challenges? Because size, scale, processes, capabilities, very, very different for both.
Yeah, I think, like, for example, when Flipkart acquired Myntra, and obviously that's a much smaller scale deal than the deal that we're talking about right now. But the key pieces being that the new entity comes with its own strengths, has a deep understanding of executing well in that market, has been able to keep other large competitors at bay and win. You'd want to ensure that you are consolidating those gains and you are powering those gains with short-term boosters, if any. I think, and this is, to me, it's commonsensical, and what Binny and what Doug are saying is that, hey, for Walmart's strengths to be applicable in India, Walmart would have to learn about India. And while they have been doing that in the offline space, online supply chains work very differently than offline supply chains. It's been very visible when you look at performance online. Globally, very few offline players have been able to win online. It is online-first companies that are winning the online battle. So I feel Walmart has a lot to gain.
Right.
Post their acquisition of Jet and Shoes and now Flipkart, they have a lot to gain in terms of how can they win, how can they do better in understanding online spaces. So I see this very synergistic, and I think any moves to rapidly move or improve supply chains on one side or the other might be detrimental. And I think we have sane people on both sides. So I doubt that will happen.
Right. The question I would like to ask you, Meekan, is how much money you make at the end of all of this. But that, no, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to ask you that question. But I do want to ask you about why do you believe Sachin decided to walk away? I mean, obviously it looks like he wasn't in line or in alignment with the strategy going forward. I mean, have you had a conversation with Sachin about this?
He's a close friend. Doesn't make sense for me to answer the question. So sorry, Shireen, I can't answer either of your two questions.
Sure. No, I know. It was unfair. It was unfair of me to ask you that anyway. But Anil, let me get a perspective from you on what you see as being the big opportunity. Groceries, foods. That's likely to be a big play going forward, is what we're given to understand. The big opportunity and the big challenge.
I think grocery and food, and like Alok said, tier 3, tier 4. I think those are massive challenges. Nobody has yet figured that out. Not Flipkart, not Amazon, not Paytm. If anything, I have a lot of respect for a bunch of Chinese apps who've been able to infiltrate and get a lot of adoption from users in tier 3, tier 4. They're not in commerce, but they are in messaging, they are in file sharing, and in bunch of those areas, they understand those consumers better than any of the e-commerce companies. So I feel that is a large opportunity, right? So like the next 250 million users, grocery, food, I think those are the big bets.
Those are the big bets. Sanjeev Agarwal, I'll end by asking you in 10 seconds exactly. Yesterday, Harish Bajur on my program said that this deal is a sign that India's startup ecosystem has grown up. How would you define it?
I think watershed moment. Since you gave me 10 seconds.
Watershed moment is exactly what Binny described it. Okay, unfortunately that's all the time that I have, but watershed moment is exactly how Binny described it as well. Sanjeev Agarwal, Anil, Meekan Maheshwari and Alok Mittal, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV18 to explain to us what you make of this watershed moment for India's startup universe. With that, it is time for us to wrap up. Thanks very much for watching.